There's something funny about a fellow that'll do something like that, said the other girl eagerly. He doesn't want any trouble with anybody. Who doesn't? I inquired. Gatsby. Somebody told me. The two girls and Jordan leaned together confidentially. Somebody told me that they thought he killed a man once. A thrill passed over all of us. The three Mr. Mumbles bent forward and listened eagerly. I don't think it's so much that, argued Lucille skeptically. It's more that he was a German spy during the war. One of the men nodded in confirmation. I heard that from a man who knew all about him, grew up with him in Germany, he assured us positively. Oh no, said the first girl. It couldn't be that, because he was in the American army during the war. As our credulity switched back to her, she leaned forward with enthusiasm. You look at him sometime when he thinks nobody's looking at him? I'll bet he killed a man. She narrowed her eyes and shivered. Lucille shivered. We all turned around and looked for Gatsby. It was testimony to the romantic speculation that he inspired that there were whispers about him from those who had found little that it was necessary to whisper about in the world. So part of the reason that Gatsby is such a big deal is that nobody knows him. And his reputation essentially has spoken for him on all of these events. So if you look at the screen, there are these couple lines, right? Somebody told me he killed a man. So you have that option of who he could be. You've got, I think it was mentioned a little bit earlier that he's Kaiser Wilhelm's cousin once removed or something. Some people think that he fought for Germany. Now remember, this is in World War I. We haven't even gotten to World War II yet because this is set in the 1920s. And then you have the other option of, oh, no, he was in American Army, in the American Army during the war. And then you have Nick's, essentially, observation as the narrator, right? It was a testimony to what Gatsby has done in throwing these elaborate parties and never telling anybody who he is or being upfront about those things, that people who are not interested in anything, right? You've got all these people at a party who probably have had all these experiences in the world that they would choose to focus so much of their time and so much of their conversation focusing on who this mysterious Gatsby is. So again, Gatsby's reputation speaks, of mystery and intrigue, which is why so many people are obsessed. The first supper, there would be another one after midnight, was now being served, and Jordan invited me to join her own party, who were spread around a table on the other side of the garden. There were 3 married couples and Jordan's escort, a persistent undergraduate given to violent innuendo, and obviously under the impression that sooner or later Jordan was going to yield him up her person to greater or lesser degree. So you've got this kind of university guy who thinks that Jordan's essentially going to sleep with him. Instead of rambling, this party had preserved a dignified homogeneity and assumed to itself a function of representing the staid nobility of the countryside, East Egg condescending to West Egg, and carefully on guard against its spectroscopic gaiety. So again, East Eggers are condescending or, actually bowing down in order to hang out in West Egg with people who they believe lower than themselves. Let's get out, whispered Jordan, after a somehow wasteful and inappropriate half hour. This is much too polite for me. We got up, and she explained that we were going to find the host. I had never met him, she said, and it was making me uneasy. The undergraduate nodded in a cynical, melancholy way. He doesn't like that Nick's essentially stealing his girl. The bar, where we glanced first, was crowded, but Gatsby was not there. She couldn't find him from the top of the steps, and he wasn't on the veranda. On a chance, we tried an important-looking door and walked into a high Gothic library, paneled with carved English oak and probably transported complete from some ruin overseas. A stout, middle-aged man with enormous owl-eyed spectacles was sitting somewhat drunk on the edge of the great table, staring with unsteady concentration at the shelves of books. As we entered, he wheeled excitedly around and examined Jordan from head to foot. "What do you think?" he demanded impetuously. "About what?" He waved his hand towards the bookshelves. "About that! As a matter of fact, you didn't bother to ascertain. I ascertained. They're real." "The books?" He nodded. "Absolutely real. Have pages and everything. I thought they'd be a nice durable cardboard. Matter of fact, they're absolutely real. Pages and... Here, let me show you." Taking our skepticism for granted, he rushed to the bookcases and returned with Volume 1 of the Stoddard Lectures. See, he cried triumphantly. It's a bona fide piece of printed matter. It fooled me. This fella's a regular Belasco. It's a triumph. What thoroughness, what realism. Knew when to stop, too. Didn't cut pages. But what do you want? What do you expect? So this is actually a very important scene. As you can see on the screen, Gatsby's library from the movie is pictured there, and this man who is known as Owl Eyes is obviously the man who is in that picture. He has obviously been at the party, but he has gone into the house and into the library. In many books and novels and movies, the library is considered the heart of every single house. And obviously the heart is what makes the body run. And Owl Eyes has keyed into something that a lot of people haven't necessarily spoken out loud, but he believes that everything that Gatsby is doing is this big front. It's all fake. It's just a show. And so when he goes to the library, he believes that, like Gatsby's parties and personality, that all of these books are likewise going to be fake, that they're just going to be cardboard that has paint on them, but when he pulls it out, there's nothing in there. And what Owl Eyes is talking to Jordan and Nick about is the fact that, oh my gosh, this library is actually real. And yet, even though he admits that the books are real and the library is real, he still says this guy is a regular Belasco. And Belasco back then was a very, very famous playwright who put on staged plays. And the idea of a play is that it's not real life, that it's fake, but it seems real. And so he's essentially connecting Gatsby to somebody who can ingeniously stage this fake reality. And then he goes further and he says, what thoroughness, what realism. And realism is an art form. It is making something, painting something, telling a story in a certain way that makes it seem absolutely real. So again, you have this man who really keys in onto kind of Gatsby's ploy, that Gatsby is putting up this big front, that it's all fake, and yet nobody understands why he would be doing that. And we, as the audience, unless you've seen the movie or you've read the book already, have no idea why he would be doing that. And that's kind of this major question that pulls Nick and the readers throughout this whole book. So it's a very, very key scene. Let's see. He snatched the book from me and replaced it hastily on its shelf, muttering that if one brick was removed, the whole library was liable to collapse. So again, he's saying that this library, it's all built brick by brick by brick, but it's faulty and it's fake, and therefore if one thing was removed, then everything was probably this whole illusion was going to collapse. Who brought you? He demanded. Or did you just come? I was brought. Most people were brought. Jordan looked at him alertly, cheerfully, without answering. I was brought by a woman named Roosevelt, he continued. Mrs. Claude Roosevelt. Do you know her? I met her somewhere last night. I've been drunk for about a week now, and I thought it might sober me up to sit in a library. Has it? A little bit, I think. I can't tell yet. I've only been here an hour. Did I tell you about the books? They're real. You told us. We shook hands with him gravely and went back outdoors. There was dancing now on the canvas in the garden, old men pushing young girls backward in eternal graceless circles, superior couples holding each other tortuously, fashionably, and keeping in the corners, and a great number of single girls dancing individualistically or relieving the orchestra for a moment of the burden of the banjo or the traps. By midnight, the hilarity had increased. So again, it's getting later, people are more drunk, everyone's finding everything funny. A celebrated tenor had sung in Italian, and a notorious contralto had sung in jazz, and between the numbers, people were doing stunts all over the garden, while happy, vacuous, so empty, bursts of laughter rose toward the summer sky. So again, this whole paragraph, you can really see that very light and airy language. A pair of stage twins, who turned out to be the girls in yellow, did a baby act in costume, and champagne was served in glasses bigger than finger bowls. The moon had risen higher, and floating in the sound was a triangle of silver scales, trembling a little to the stiff, tinny drips of the banjos on the lawn. I was still with Jordan Baker. We were sitting at a table with a man of about my age and a rowdy little girl who gave way upon the slightest provocation to uncontrollable laughter. I was enjoying myself now. I had taken 2 finger bowls of champagne, and the scene had changed before my eyes into something significant, elemental, and profound. At a lull in the entertainment, the man looked at me and smiled. "Your face is familiar," he said politely. "Weren't you in the 3rd Division during the war?" "Why, yes. I was in the 9th Machine Gun Battalion. I was in the 7th Infantry until June 1918. I knew I'd see you somewhere before." We talked for a moment about some wet, gray little villages in France. Evidently he lived in this vicinity, for he told me that he had just bought a hydroplane and was going to try it out in the morning. So a hydroplane is a plane that goes on water. "Want to go with me, old sport? Just near the shore along the Sound." "What time?" "Any time that suits you best." It was on the tip of my tongue to ask his name when Jordan looked around and smiled. "Having a gay time now?" she inquired. "Much better." I turned again to my new acquaintance. "This is an unusual party for me. I haven't even seen the host. I live over there." I waved my hand at the invisible hedge in the distance. "And this man Gatsby sent over the chauffeur with an invitation." For a moment, he looked at me as if he had failed to understand. "I am Gatsby," he said suddenly. "What?" I exclaimed. "Oh, I beg your pardon." "I thought you knew, old sport. I'm afraid I'm not a very good host." He smiled understandingly, much more than understandingly. It was one of those rare smiles with a quality of eternal reassurances in it that you may come across 4 or 5 times in a life. It faced, or seemed to face, the whole external world for an instant, and then concentrated on you, with an irresistible prejudice in your favor. It understood you just so far as you wanted to be understood, believed in you as you would like to believe in yourself, and assured you that it had precisely the impression of you that, at your best, you hoped to convey. So here we have met Gatsby, right? Gatsby goes in and makes it obviously as casual as possible with Nick, and Nick realizes, oh my gosh, you're the guy, this mysterious dude who invited me over to your party. And then you get this great descriptive line that really helps establish Gatsby and a very key part of Gatsby, right? We know that he gave a dress to the girl who ripped her dress and that he doesn't want problems with anybody. But he also has this personality and this smile, which you can see the quote on the screen. This smile that essentially tells the person he is smiling at that you are the most important person in my life at this moment, and that he views you as the best that you want to be. He views you exactly how you want to be viewed, and he is saying that, you know, you are this amazing person just with a look, just with a smile. And Nick Carraway says that this type of smile, this type of personality, this encouragement can only come across in people probably 4 or 5 times in life. So not only is it rare, but it's also encouraging, it's warming, and it makes people want to be around Gatsby because Gatsby believes everything that you want to believe of yourself. So it's just this very key and this beautiful line. So precisely at that point, it vanished, and I was looking at an elegant, young roughneck, a year or two over 30. So again, he's the same age as Tom and the same age as Nick, whose elaborate formality of speech just missed being absurd. Sometime before he introduced himself, I got a strong impression that he was picking his words with care. So then you have this, again, mysterious quality set forth, right? His accent is a little over the top, so it probably isn't real, and that his speech is very guarded, that every single word he's saying is purposeful and well thought out, because he probably is trying to put an image out that isn't necessarily the true image of who he is. And that's a very, very key quality. And again, the whole mystery of the book and the question of who is Gatsby and why does he do what he does?